Joe! Joe on Joe is the only podcast where Joe talks about Joe. And now, your host, Joe Slepsky.
Hello again, and welcome back to Joe on Joe Illustrated. It's me, your host, Joe Slepsky. And I took a week off last week. Just actually work got in the way. I actually had a lot of work to do. And when it came to crunch time, I said, you know what? Give yourself a break and take a day. So I hope that wasn't... hope you guys didn't miss me too much is what I'm saying. And that you guys know I appreciate you. And we are back again this week. And this week on Joe, we are going to be covering G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, issue number 65. 65. I'm also doing something a little different this week. I'm recording from my sound set up that I typically use for recording the cartoon show. And one of the things that, I've been procrastinating about is getting a soundboard together, like a real soundboard. I know I use some drops in this, but those are all put in post, right? But not anymore.
Yo, Joe!
Now I got a button and I got a rim shot and I got a wah-wah horn. And I got crowd applause. So the world is just about to open up, ladies and gentlemen. If there's any Chicago fans, like, I love sound drops. I grew up listening to The Loop, WLUP in Chicago, AM, when it was all this talk stuff. And between Kevin Matthews and Johnny Bradmeyer, they used drops all the time, and I've always just been in love with it. So I'm excited about doing it. It's going to actually I'm going to try to do the edit actually all on the board. So there may be some pauses, there may be some lulls, and part of this is also being done to make my post editing a little faster. Not that you guys need to know that look under the hood. So if it sounds just a little different, sounds just a little, maybe a little more delayed, that's why, because I'm trying to cut a little time in the post department. So with all that out of the way, I want to thank everyone. I hope everyone's doing really well in this new year. I'm excited for all the things that we have in front of us. We got COVID vaccines. We've got more G.I. Joe on the way. But before that, we've also got to hear a word from our sponsor, the Movies and a Meal podcast. Listeners, I know what you need in your life. You need more podcasts. And you also love movies. So why not do a podcast? It's about not one movie. It's about not two movies. It's about 3 movies and a meal. I'm talking the Movies and a Meal podcast. This show is great. It's brought to you by Keith, Brad, and Ben, and each week they bring a new movie to the table, which they all discuss as a group. And it's not, your highfalutin movies. It's What We Do in the Shadows, The Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer, and Out of Sight. It's Bad Education, Ghost Rider, and A View to a Kill. It's X-Men Last Stand, Queen Sugar, The Mandalorian, and Major League 2. They are a lot of fun to listen to. You guys know Ben. It's our friend Ben Penseriga. He was a guest on Joe and Joe. In fact, Ben was the very first remote guest that I ever had on this podcast, so he's always got a special place in my heart. I'm really digging this. I just started listening to it last week. It is a lot of fun. They bring a guest in. The guest, I listened to their Heathers episode. They were joined by Kelly, and she went in depth on her favorite movie, which was Heathers, and it made me want to go watch Heathers to watch with them. I really dig it. So guys, find them out there at Movies and a Meal, Twitter, Instagram. Their website is moviesandameal.podbean.com. They put out 1 episode a week. Give them a listen, guys. Support them. Let them know Joe on Joe sent you. I don't think you're going to be disappointed. It is quite entertaining. And now back to the show. Give it up. Give it up, everybody. Give it up for Movies and a Meal podcast. You like that? You like that? That's the first use of it in just in natural use, guys. Movies and a Meal. That was for you. That applause was just for you. So we like to start all my segments, all my illustrated shows. We like to use a little segment we call
You Were Saying,
and look at the comic books that were on the shelves the same month as the comic book that we're talking about. This month we're talking about G.I. Joe 65. It's got a November 87 cover date. We won't get into that. Listeners, you know what I'm saying. And here we go with Marvel Comics, November of 87. Well, there it is. It's the second month, we'll say, of just probably one of the greatest Spider-Man epics of all time. It's Kraven's Last Hunt. So you've got Amazing Spider-Man 294, Web of Spider-Man, and it should be Spectacular Spider-Man. Yeah, here we go. Spectacular 132 and Web of Spider-Man 32. Again, I went into detail on this last episode. Kraven's Last Hunt is phenomenal, especially if you're a J. Joe fan and you appreciate Mike Zeck's artwork. You're going to love it. Seek it out, read it. That's all I can say. Uncanny X-Men Annual from 1987. It's Annual 11. This is Alan Davis doing the artwork, so you know it's gorgeous. It gets a little bit into that weird... Alan Davis likes to work on projects that have like... well, he's English himself, but like there's usually this like... how do we put this? He had a book called Clandestine that was like a family or group of peculiar, kind of elfish, kind of mystical, magical teams. And he's done that a lot. Like in Excalibur, they would bump up against these teams. Excalibur obviously set in Britain. And he's got this way of he's kind of like, it's kind of like how Jonathan Hickman currently does it with X-Men, where Hickman likes to introduce, and I'm not saying it's great, but Hickman likes to introduce these new characters, like massive groups of characters, weird names, fully rendered backgrounds, all this rich history there, and then he introduces them for one issue, and then they move on and all that stuff. And there's a part of me that's like, great, that's super creative and interesting, but then there's another part of me that says, I just came to read the book about the X-Men. But if I recall correctly, this annual of the X-Men is like an interstellar kind of group along those lines of this old order of what have you. And it culminates in Wolverine regenerating himself with one drop of blood. And that's amazing. And this is the annual that people then use that as an example of, you remember that one time? That's how, we given enough power, Wolverine could regenerate entirely with one drop of blood. What they chose to ignore in this issue is that his skeleton wouldn't have regenerated, but it's Alan Davis artwork. So it's absolutely gorgeous. And that cannot be denied, everybody. Cannot absolutely be denied. So what else is on the rack this week? Masters of the Universe 10. This is it. Well, it's Masters of the Universe, the motion picture #1. That's fantastic. It is the adaptation of the movie. I'm fairly sure I got these issues in the last couple of years, somewhat recently. And it's adapting the Canon Pictures He-Man movie, which is to this day just a special thing. There's a lot to like in that movie. Like Frank Langella's Skeletor is great. I think Eva Lynn is great. It's a canon movie, so there's no budget, and Gwildor is terrible, and the Key is terrible. We spent entirely too much time on Courtney Cox and her stupid boyfriend, and or is it her brother even? I don't even know. And they're dead. No, it's her brother, because it's their dead parents, and all that's. But that's all because they had no budget, so they set things in America, California. And then famously, the final battle literally had no budget. Like, if I recall in this one, they got to the end of shooting it and they were like, we've run out of money. So they called them back in and went into a dark soundstage to just like, and using smoke and like, spotlights. That's how they shot that final battle between He-Man and Skeletor. It's just terrible. However, it's a live action He-Man movie, and I'm always fun. That's always fun for me. Teela's great. Man at Arms is awesome. Even at times, to be honest, Dolph Lundgren's not terrible as He-Man, giving him, if they give him what to do. It's just he uses a gun a lot, and that's stupid. Keep the sword on him, all that stuff. Anyway, this isn't a He-Man podcast, but the Masters of the Universe motion picture comic book came out this week. This is important, actually. This is the month that Marvel Comics, wow, so this is 87. They're still putting these out. Marvel Comics started publishing their Masterworks series, which was Marvel Masterworks Spider-Man #1, Fantastic Four #1, and X-Men #1. And the Masterworks is taking, I believe it's about 10 issues of the first 10 issues of their appearances, and reprinting them in hardcover deluxe, like bookshelf ability. Now, today, obviously, comics are very common on the bookshelf. They weren't as much back then, especially in this type of treatment. They were expensive. They still are. I think they're over, I think they're like $65 or something like that. I think they're over 50 now. And I haven't bought one of these in a long time, but they're still publishing them. I believe they're in the 200s, or well, they're definitely in the 200s. I think they're in like the 300s. And they've really gone through a lot of their back catalog. Some of these Masterworks can fetch a pretty penny on the back issue market. These early ones do not, because for all you collectors out there, a lot of times what you'll see in reprint, like hardcover collections like this, is the first volume they will print using a random number. They'll print 10,000. They'll make 10,000 copies, totally random, and because they don't know what the demand will be, so they'll put it out, and let's say it's really great demand. Okay, great. Then the people are thirsty for it. They'll make more, and you'll be on its way. But let's just say of those 10,000 copies, only 5,000 sell. They're like, oh, okay, so now we learned our lesson. So now when they go back to print volume 2, they are only going to print, again, random numbers. Now they'll only print 5,000, or they'll print 4,000. You know what I mean? They won't print exactly enough to meet demand. They'll still keep a little bit of demand out there. And so then they'll put those 4,000 on. This same applies to actual issues of comic books too. This kind of trend still applies. So then the 4,000 will go print a volume 2, and then they'll see what the demand is. And so if people were still like, hey, we didn't get enough, we still want them. So then they get to volume 3. So now they've kind of found a middle ground. So they know 10,000 is too many, 5,000 is too little. So now they end up printing, say, 7,000 comics. Now they get good sell through. Enough people get it that want it. There's enough on the back issue market, sitting in the stores for inventory purposes, and things tend to move on just fine. So when you're getting these runs like this, so what I'm saying is Marvel Masterworks Spider-Man #1, and it's funny because I just sold these on eBay, literally these actual things, because I remember when these came out, I was very excited. I was like, I'm going to collect every one of these. And I, as a kid, spent a lot of money on them. I was $50 or whatever, $40, whatever they were at the time. There's so many copies of these out there. The value in them typically doesn't go high, but some of the later volumes do, because the later volumes might end up either those print runs, like we were just talking about, they were too low for demand, or they end up printing a run of comics that just aren't ever really reprinted, and for whatever reason they're hard to find, but no one wants them. There's some random middle of the road Masterworks that go for $200, $300, $400 in the aftermarket, and I'm telling you, you could have bought them for $5 or $10 5 years ago, 4 years ago. So keep your eyes on Masterworks is what I'm saying. Stuff like this, if you're ever at this is the reason I'm sharing this. If you're ever at a con, or you're ever at a show or something, and you see a table full of these Masterworks or stuff, and they've got them for $5 or $10, they've got them really cheap. It may not be your cup of tea. One, give it a flyer, because it may be your cup of tea. You may read it and go, oh, wow, I never knew, I liked old issues like Showcase presents the Atom or something like that. Like old issues of DC that you've never really read. So give it a flyer if it's cheap, but also hold on to it. Put it away somewhere. You never know. It could hold its value. If not, you're out $5 and you still got a great book and you got a great collection. So that's Marvel Masterworks. Also out this week is Marvel graphic novel, The Big Change, which is the Hulk versus the Thing by Jim Starlin and Bernie Wrightson. I'm here for that. That's a really fun book. I like that a lot. Some other decent stuff. It was classic X-Men's issue 15. Captain America, U.S. Agent is mid, right in the middle of his era as Cap, so that's no good for anyone. So that's it for Marvel Comics.
You were saying?
And now we're going to go over to DC Comics and check them out. November of '87. John Byrne is right in the middle of all his storytelling with Superman. We've got a Superman Booster Gold crossover in Action #1. Blue Beetle is over on issue 18 of his own series. Batman 413. I've read this. I don't remember exactly the storyline, but the cover is a Walter Simonson cover, and he's drawn like a samurai. I forget, it's like a robot or something. It's been a long time since I've read that, but it's a great Walter Simonson cover. I've always loved it. Over at Booster Gold 22, it's a nice crossover with the Justice League International. And boy, am I thinking about the Justice League International recently, because I just finished reading the first omnibus. Came out like last year. Man, I just plowed through in like 2 weeks, 1,000 some pages. It's so good. I haven't read the Justice League International books. I'm talking about the Kevin Maguire, Keith Giffen, J.M. DeMatteis stuff. I haven't read that stuff in 25 years. I don't know. I'll see an issue here and there and I'll always find it. But it burned into me when I was in high school. That's when I first found it. So it's Justice League International number 7 is on the stands this month. And let's see, 87. So I wouldn't read Justice League, I think, for about 3 more years. I think it was like 89 or 90 is when I got into Justice League. So they were definitely in like their 40s or 50s. But I picked all these up as back issues in high school, and I just adored them. But I never read them in order, so I recently did the omnibus and read them all again. This is one of those things of like masterclass time, right? If you're a writer, you're out there and you're a writer, you write comics or in whatever, and you're trying to write funny, and you want to try to find a way to balance a tone of funny without being stupid, or funny with being natural and in character, there is no better tutorial than reading the Justice League International Omnibus by Giffen and DeMatteis and Maguire, and a host of other guys worked on it too. I saw Bill Willingham did some artwork on it, and of course, what's his name? He's a really good. Ty Templeton did a bunch of the fill-in stuff too. That's the other thing. I forgot how many like fill-ins there were when Maguire must have got behind on deadline. But it is a master class in pacing and wit, and some of the references certainly are dated. They're certainly they're a little more topical than timeless, but almost all of them come out of character, and they come out of the characters that they establish early in this series. Batman's always Batman, and if he cracks a joke, it's a moment. Like, he doesn't just crack a joke and it goes unspoken. He cracks a joke, everyone in the room stops, and they should, because he's Batman, and they established early on. Well, one, we know what Batman is, but they established in this book, he's not here for you playing around. So it's like 5 or 6 issues into it or something. The Beetle finally cracks a joke. I think it's the Star Trek joke, I think. And Beetle keeps making these Star Trek references because he's flying the bug. It's like they're flying the Starship Enterprise. And Batman, I believe, calls him like Mr. Sulu. And Beetle's like, did you just what? And and he kind of gives him a zip it look. And it's so great because they've set it up for multiple issues that Batman's not here to play. John Jones, Martian Manhunter, same thing, where he's very friendly to them, but he just doesn't get it. So like his character is so well defined. Beetle and Booster, both Jokers, both different though. And then Mr. Miracle's in there, and he is this. They play him note perfect. I don't know if that's how you like your New Gods, but they play him note perfect as this put upon suburban house husband who just wants to hang out with the guys, and he gets into the hijinks, but then he's always got to go, I got to go home with Barda. And it's great because it's a different fun personality, but it's still a fun personality. Like I could go on forever. That's Justice League International. If you've never read it, highest recommendation. Let's see here. Legion of Superheroes 40 is out this week. It's the Legion fighting Starfinger. We're going to take a moment right now to point out this run of Legion. I don't believe this issue specifically, but this run of Legion. Although that looks like his autograph. Actually, yeah, let me take a look. Yeah, it is actually. Yeah, so Legion 40. He didn't do the interior art, but he did do the cover. Mr. Steve Lytle drew it, and he passed away this week. I don't know if you guys are big Legion fans or follow, how much you follow old comics and comic artist stuff, but Steve Lytle passed away from complications of COVID. So it's too bad because his artwork is just gorgeous. absolutely just gorgeous. It's just fluid. It's like, it's like butter. That's what his stuff was. His stuff was like every line just flowed into the next, and was just a treat to view his stuff. His storytelling was really great. He did a ton of Flash stuff too, but he passed away last week. So that's so we would take a moment to remember Steve Lytle, who's I just was a big fan of. Speaking of Star Trek 44, Kirk and Spock looking off into nothing. I did a reread of Star Trek last year. I talked about that a little bit on this podcast, and I like them, but then at a certain point, I'm like, all right, I've read enough Star Trek. Like it was just a lot. Superman Volume 2, number 11. John Byrne. It's Byrne reintroducing Mr. Mxyzptlk. I'm here for it. It's fantastic, and I love it. Byrne's reimagining of Superman was great, and the fact that he included Mxyzptlk so early on in his reimagining of it is important, because he's just such an important character to the mythos. He's, the imp from the fifth dimension, shows up, I want to say it was like every 90 days, which was their way of saying every 3 months I could use him. But to, cause havoc, you get him to say his name backwards. I love it. And I love that there's that level, because it's so comic booky and it's so stupid, It's one of the things that, like Alan Moore's Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, which is really, really great. And it's one of the easier, like when he made Mxyzptlk the villain in that, it was a nice shock and a nice surprise. But on the other hand, you go, well, like, you could only tell this as the last story, because you've just, for that quote unquote continuity, you've just destroyed a big part of his mythos, and it was a great way to use it. So it was not critiquing. It was the right way to use it. It was great. But him as the lovable imp that occasionally helps him but usually confounds him is just fantastic. And that's it for DC Comics.
You were saying?
Now we're going to look at what was in the movie theater. November of 87. Death Wish 4, The Crackdown. Speaking of canon films, Charles Bronson, Kay Lenz. Bunch of people I've never heard of. Oh, Danny Trejo's in this. Oh boy. So I've seen all these. I think this is the one where it takes place primarily on a street, and they're selling like in a like a neighborhood street, and they're the crackdown is like there's drug dealers in the neighborhood, and so he being Charles Bronson, what's his name? I forget what his name is in the Death Wish movies. He has to like get all the tenants of the building to help him root out these drug dealers. It's canon movie again. Speaking of canon movies, it's a canon movie. It's dumb fun. So that's in theaters on November 6th. Also, though, if you're going to the movie theater on November 6th, the only thing you should be watching is Hiding Out with John Cryer, Keith Coogan, Annabeth Gish. I rewatched this recently during COVID. It was one of my like let's feel good and watch an old movie we love. It's great. John Cryer is just like a Wall Street douchebag, living that New York life. And he what is it? He witnesses. I just watched it. He witnesses either like it must be a murder. He witnesses something terrible with the mob, so he has to go into hiding, and he goes to live with his cousin, who's played by Keith Coogan, who's awesome, and his aunt in the suburbs. And he pretends to be high school age, dyes his hair, and gets a weird haircut, wears kids' clothes, and talks weird. And it's got a little bit of I think he had a little bit of Uncle Lex in it, and it's actually a very funny movie, but it is very weird because this guy's like 25 years old, mid 20s if not a little older, and Annabeth Gish is getting all up in him, and you're like, it's a little but back then they didn't care that much about that stuff. Oh man, also on the 6th, speaking of people getting in trouble with the law, Less Than Zero. This movie's crazy good. Andrew McCarthy, Jamie Gertz, Robert Downey Jr., James Spader. Very much of the moment. Very much that. Like, snapshot of cocaine 80s. But worth a revisit. It's because it's really great performances. Some of it's silly and ridiculous, but just really, really great performances by those guys. You said we were cool. So let's see what else. Oh man, November 13th, guys. Come on, The Running Man, Arnold Schwarzenegger. You clear the decks for this. There's only one other movie came out that week. Look at this. The previous week there were 8 movies came out the previous week. The week of Running Man, a Schwarzenegger movie, 2 movies. Running Man and a movie called Cross My Heart with Martin Short, Annette O'Toole, and Paul Reiser. Oh, and Joanna Kearns from Growing Pains. So you get everyone saying, do not cross Schwarzenegger on Running Man. Put out a rom-com to counter program for it. And we all know how great Running Man is. I love it. I've read people critique it where they're like, they wish a better director than Paul Michael Glaser had directed it. Maybe. I don't know. I'm not going to play that game. I'm not going to, Mick Fleetwood was in that movie. I'm not going to play that, what if game. I think Paul Michael Glaser gave us a hell of a movie. Richard Dawson, Jesse Ventura. I mean, Running Man is so dope. Revisit it. Now let's see. On the 20th, oh boy, Teen Wolf 2, ladies and gentlemen. Teen Wolf 2 with Jason Bateman, where he's a wrestler. He's a wrestling werewolf. Say that out loud. That's pretty great. Also is Flowers in the Attic, which I don't, maybe I saw when I was a kid, but Flowers in the Attic, disturbing story. And it was on Shudder recently. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to watch this. And so then let me down a rabbit hole of the book that's based off of, and like making of the movie and stuff. And it's there was a series of books about this family that they say was kind of based in reality, but obviously not. And it's Southern Gothic, like soap opera stuff. And it's wild. So yeah, the movie's okay. It's not great. It does have a young Christy Swanson in it, which is funny. Louise Fletcher, Nurse Ratched, she's in it. The movie's all right. But I went on the rabbit hole of all the Flowers in the Attic books, and it really was. They took those characters on quite a journey. And finally, November 27th, guys. November 27th was a huge week for like this family-friendly rom-com. This would have been Thanksgiving. And this makes sense because this next movie is absolutely a Thanksgiving staple. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. John Hughes, Steve Martin, John Candy. This movie has only gotten better with age. It's just delightful. John Candy is Del, I think his name is, which I believe was named after Del Close. Steve Martin, it's great. I mean, guys, last time we saw Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, it's just delightful. But also this week, same day, 3 Men and a Baby, which, never forget, directed by Leonard Nimoy. And it's a great movie. It's a really great movie. Did they need to do a sequel? Probably not. And I think it's a remake. I think there were like similar. I was looking at, there was some Western movie that was kind of the same premise recently, like an old Western. But 3 Men and a Baby is delightful. It's all about unprotected sex. And Tom Selleck and Steve Guttenberg and Ted Danson, and they don't know who the father is, but they have a kid that they then have to raise because any one of them could be the father. So it's very charming. They're all really, really good in it. 3 Men and a Baby is a great movie. And that's it for
You Were Saying.
And now we're going to dig into G.I. Joe number 65.
Now, mass is ready.
That's right, Destro. Mass is ready indeed. Speaking of Mike Zeck, there's that cover. I don't know who the astronaut on this cover is, guys. I can't really tell. So, if anyone has any guesses, let me know. He's got white hair, so that's not a, which is probably just like a coloring oversight. I'm calling it a mistake, but like an oversight or, the glare of the sun or something. So it's hard to tell who that is. I'm assuming it's, what's this, a Payload or the other guy, but it doesn't look like him because he's been drawn both as a black man and a white man in this book. Let's see this issue, or is this No, because that's the Defiant. I was going to say, is that supposed to be just an American astronaut? I don't know. Let's see here. Hard top and payload. So I guess it's supposed to be payload. Yeah, it's probably supposed to be payload. I mean, because that would make sense. It's him. Yeah, so that's supposed to be payload. But so reason in 2 issues we've gotten payload facially looking wildly different in 3 different spots. We've got him first arriving as an African American man. Now on this cover, there's a wisp. There might be a mustache there, but it also looks like his upturned lip, and he's got white hair. And on the inside of the book, it's a white guy with kind of an afro going and a big mustache. So, but having said that, it's a cool cover. It's the Defiant. It's actually on the other side of it's on the moon with the sun in the distance. So we're all blind from looking at the sun. And a generic Cobra shuttle. I don't love the shuttle. I don't love the Cobra shuttle, but I'll say this for it though. It conveys what we need. So there's no toy, right? There is no Cobra shuttle. There's no toy for him to reference. And you need to reference something sinister, shooting lasers, attacking the G.I. Joe Defiant. And we have all that for a reference. So your main characters are going to be really spot on toy reference. I wish the Cobra shuttle was a little, I mean, I guess it looks like, well, no, because the inside's red. This is blue. It sort of looks like the Cobra shuttle, but it doesn't really look like the Cobra shuttle. So that's weird. But, good looking action cover. I like that the moon's the backdrop instead of the Earth. Usually to show that they're in space, it would be, you would see the, like the globe. So that's kind of cool. So, so that's it for the Mike Zeck and Bob McLeod cover.
Yo, Joe!
Now, Shuttle Complex, written by Larry Hama, Ron Wagner on pencils, Randy Umberlin inks, Bob Sharon coloring, Joe Rosen lettering, Bob Harris editor, and DeFalco, editor-in-chief. Tom DeFalco, big fan, loved his stuff in the 80s. He did a lot of fun stuff. And this page is, I gushed on how much I enjoy Ron Wagner drawing G.I. Joe. I'm going to continue to do it this issue. There is so much realness in this book, guys. You don't understand. Look at the detail he gives this whole page. This is great. It's an exciting shot with no action on it. He finds a fun angle on this. We're looking at a normal astronaut, not a G.I. Joe astronaut, just a normal astronaut in the USS, United States space shuttle, regular shuttle mission. And they're in space working on a USAF satellite. But he chooses to go to really wild high angle. So we get almost the full view of this huge satellite in space. We get the tether to the space shuttle. We get Earthrise in the back. The most of it is the planet Earth, and it's really sharp. It's just a nice use of detail on this page that could have easily been not as detailed, not as realistic. So I appreciate that.
Yo, Joe!
Now, get a couple pages of just these regular astronauts working on this, and we learned that their sensors are going a little cuckoo. There's they're getting someone's been running a worldwide operation right under their noses, and they need to tell mission headquarters right away. So, and what we see in this final panel, it's a great it's a really nice, I would call this a very soft opening, right? So we open on this neutral, we don't know who they are, but we trust them because they're decked out in the authority of astronauts, right? So we trust that they're scientists, that they're capable, they know what they're doing. And then we get the setup of someone's been running this operation under their noses, and then the camera pulls away and we're even further away from them, and off in the distance we see that there's a satellite and it's got a Cobra insignia on it. So we know that Cobra is up to no good. And it's a very cinematic open is what it is. These first 2 pages, very, very cinematic, reminiscent of how a little bit, what is it? Superman 2 opens, where they're just regular astronauts doing their thing, and then they run into the Zod and his crew, and then that, blows up in the world's face. but showing people that we don't know in their jobs, doing their jobs, they become these in this case astronauts. They're a symbol for us of trust, and so we don't need to know any background on them. We just trust that what they're telling us, it's all exposition, but that's what we're going to use for the rest of the story. It's pretty great.
Yo, Joe!
Now, so we go from that Cobra satellite down to Cobra Island. And it's the Baroness and Fred. She's kind of reaming him out like, why did you think you could impersonate Cobra Commander? Like, now we're both in it. Which is funny because it's a weird, remember last time we saw her, she was very like, all right, we're doing this. She might be having a little bit of buyer's remorse, but I think it's also a way of manipulating him to, good cop, bad cop, right? So it's, how could you possibly, don't worry, honey, we'll get through this together. Like that kind of manipulation. I think that's what the Baroness is up to here. Because he's showing a lot of doubts. He's like, we're never going to get through this, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, no, honey, come on. We're going to do this. And this is where we go when Dr. Mindbender steps in. And this is a fun bit because we know Fred doesn't know anything. And this page lands at a nice cliffhanger where Mindbender just generically says, we've been found out. Our most secret plan is blown.
Yo, Joe!
And we're getting that the explanation of what it is from Mindbender to Fred. It's one of those fun, mixed identity. It's a case like mistaken identity where the guy the more dumb you play, people will tell you what they need to say. That's how Fred's getting by in all this. And Mindbender explains that once the astronauts on the shuttle that we saw, once they've completed installing these new sensors on all the spy satellites, the true purpose of the Cobra terradromes is going to be apparent. So if you guys remember, we've never really known what these terradromes are being built. Sure, they're terror, and sure they make Cobra money by selling them one at a time to all these things. But Larry's constantly hinted at that there's a bigger plan for getting these terradromes set up all over the world, and this mission here is going to expose that plan. So Mindbender has this, what must be done, and you got to do it now. He doesn't say what it is, though, and all Fred does is agree and say yes, which leads Mindbender to, isn't it exciting to have a decisive leader at the helm again, Baroness? And I love the acting on this page. Get a nice medium shot where there's a lot of dialogue, right? So they keep the characters in just like a quarter or half of the panel up top. And we know that there's going to be a lot of dialogue, so the rest of the panel is just boring computers. But it's still drawn, right? It's not just blank wall because we still want to keep this realism. And the second panel is literally just a shot of a computer keyboard, nothing exciting at all. But the star of that second panel is the exposition. And that's really key. Sometimes the words do need to be the star of it. It's not always about the person delivering it. So in this case, we need to understand what they're saying in that. So you give us a very bland second panel here, which is Mindbender's hand, on the keypad. Very bland panel. So all of our attention is focused on what's in the word balloon, and that's talking about the true purpose of the Cobra terradromes. It's a real subtle trick, and it's really smart. And then it gets flipped in the next panel with all this energy of Mindbender pointing at you, the camera, but there's Fred's in the picture too, so he's pointing at Fred, but it brings this energy back to you. And then, and then you get Fred, slamming the table and kind of like, yeah. Now, again, with Fred, it's going to be hard to do a lot of action, right? Because he's in a full mask. So whenever you're drawing or whenever you're acting with Cobra Commander, and in this case, Fred is Cobra Commander, and you got someone's mask, you have his eyes and you have his body movements to show what he's feeling. So in this case, they have him slamming down on the table, like, sure, very angry. And then you get this zoom in on Baroness's eyes. I'm actually not sure if she understands what it means, or agreement with, or if she's if she doesn't. I don't know if she knows what the mission is that he just agreed to sign up for, or if she's as confused as Fred, is what I'm saying.
Yo, Joe!
Meanwhile, over at Utah, the detail on this top panel, guys, is top notch. It's the Tomahawk, and they're dropping off. Who is it? It's Duke and Ripcord, or no, Hawk and Ripcord, and it's amazing. If you guys have a copy of this, look at the detail in this top panel. It's just gorgeous, just absolutely gorgeous to watch. And it's, they're getting dropped off at the new pit, and they finally call it the Pit 3. And Duke opens up the the underground door so they can go down and check out how things are going. And you get Mainframe kind of setting everything up. And of course, Mainframe's going to kind of quarterback this mission because it's a lot of computers and stuff. So he's giving us more of the details, that there's these widespread pattern of ultra low frequency beam transmissions, and once all these satellites are upgraded, they should be able to determine the source. I love that. In order to upgrade them, and I guess you might have to do it today too. Like, they have to be physically upgraded. That's what's so fun. Back then, guys, it wasn't just send up a new software patch to do something different. It was they needed to they would have needed to add new circuit boards to do a different function on satellites that are in space, which is pretty wild.
Yo, Joe!
Meanwhile, back on Cobra Island, so Cobra's made their base in that abandoned freighter, and Serpentor is celebrating that quote unquote Cobra Commander is going to be, quote, putting himself in mortal danger for their continued benefit, the benefit of the troops, it's fun because I don't think Serpentor knows. I think he's suspicious. He doesn't know anything, but he also is, even if it is the real Cobra Commander, he's also ready to just watch him fall on his face. He knows that, obviously he's the biggest threat to him politically. So if Cobra Commander wants to go kill himself in space, he can go kill himself in space. And this is all Fred learning that they're going to be strapping him into this Cobra shuttle, which they don't really name. And they do that. And so think of it as a bon voyage. And so these, and what's fun about space adventures and comics is they just go to it. There's no, like, Baroness isn't in a pressure suit. They just seal the doors and let's go, let's launch, let's do it.
Yo, Joe!
Fred still doesn't realize that he's going into space because he says, what's going on? And what did I get us into? The Baroness is too disgusted. So she understands what's going on. They're tilting, which means they're going up on the gantry. Please tell me. Now, here's what's cool. We don't know what he's doing. If you guys followed this, they didn't, smartly, they just showed him being put into something with a bubble, like with a big bay window, strapping him in, closing, and then we go panel by panel. They're in enclosed space. We could guess he's going to space because earlier we saw they were in space, but now they're being tilted upright. And then there's this big reveal of the Cobra shuttle being launched into space. I worry that I feel like this shuttle image was influenced by that terrible Todd McFarlane rocket that he drew in that issue. Because this feels like that. This feels like it's got that lineage to it. And I'm not interested in that continuing, but we get it. And so it's just a great sequence of events here. And picture it being a movie. We don't know. Tilted up. What's he being tilted up? And then all of a sudden, boom, blasted in space. Pretty great.
Yo, Joe!
Now, Mainframe, he sees that there's been a big launch off Cobra Island. Close up on Hawk's eyes in this middle panel, being illuminated by the yellow screen. So great. Nice choice. Nice change of pace. It breaks up the monotony of the page. I love it. Here we go with Payload in his third look. And we also got Hardtop, his crazy friend Hardtop. I don't know why Hardtop's crazy, but he's crazy. And Hawk gives him the go-ahead, and he says, take whoever you need, including me. Could this be, ladies and gentlemen, the origins of Hawk in that crazy jetpack look? Could this be where Hawk gets the inspiration to become a crazy jetpacker? I think it might be, guys. It just might be.
Yo, Joe!
So now we're back in orbit, and we're back to the U.S. shuttle. Now, the reason you have to make the Cobra Commander, the Cobra shuttle, look so different is because the Defiant, the G.I. Joe shuttle, is somewhat based on the real U.S. space shuttle. So when you include the U.S. space shuttle here and the Defiant and the Cobra shuttle, you got to make sure that your Cobra shuttle is really identifiable, and not just identifiable by color, which it's red and the other two are white. You have to keep the Defiant white because it's the toy and the toy's white, and you have to keep the space shuttle white, right? So I'm assuming, were they doing just 3 random ships from, Marvel Universe or whatever, they all would have been possibly a different color. I think the Defiant and the space shuttle would have been different shapes, but you can't do that here. So that might be why this Cobra space shuttle looks so different. Different is being kind. I'm just not a massive fan of the design, but I think that's kind of why they tend to go with this. It's also, although no, the space shuttle's a little further. I can't tell from the, so this fine, basically it's the astronauts in space, and they get a big shadow over them. And what it is it's the Cobra shuttle pulling up like a car, pulling up to the satellite where the astronauts are working on the satellite, installing that piece. I can't tell if the Cobra shuttle is just massively bigger than the space shuttle or if it's just a matter of perspective. But either way, it's a fun effect because to our eyes, it looks like the Cobra shuttle is just massive.
Yo, Joe!
So now in Utah, nice serene desert, door opens, it's just opening downwards, and up pulls the it's the Defiant, but the launch pad for the Defiant, whatever, I forget what they gave it a name, but payload's driving it. No dialogue or anything, but it's just a great sequence of events. You could almost imagine the 2001 Space Odyssey soundtrack being played on this page. It's very cool.
Yo, Joe!
I mean, this is the comic that launched 1,000 playsets, right? Like, I never had the Defiant. Actually, I don't think I was a huge fan of it. I think I thought it was a little silly because I liked the actual space shuttle, and I was like, well, I know the space shuttles are very dangerous and they're hard to fly into space, and and one had blown up a year earlier. So it's like why would the G.I. Joes mess around with something so fragile? That might have been my mindset, but I remember not being a massive fan of the Defiant. In retrospect, that playset's amazing. So it just gets a great show here. I'm sure a lot of you guys read this comic book and were like, Mom, this is what I need. So now we get the launch sequence for it, and this is the toy in action. We see the gantry get boosted up, commence ignition procedures, and the I forget the main payload rockets. I forget what those are called. It launches in the sky. I mean, it's a space shuttle launch.
Yo, Joe!
Now back in orbit, the Cobra ship it really is large though. No, it's pretty big because it's what's it's doing. It's stealing the satellite. They're just going to steal that satellite and bring it on board. And they've accidentally snagged one of the astronauts, the umbilical cord. The Baroness doesn't care that they've snagged him. However, to her, to be fair, she says we'll jettison him later. So she doesn't necessarily think they're going to kill him. She just is like, well, if we capture him, it's okay. But it's a little cold-blooded because come on, Cobra, that guy didn't do anything to you. It's not a G.I. Joe guy. And this is funny. Baroness says we need the satellite to find out how much they know about our terror drones. And Fred replies, whatever they know has to be more than what I know. And they're surrounded by a bunch of techno vipers. And they say, okay, I take it back with Baroness. She doesn't really care. She tells them to destroy the unarmed U.S. space shuttle. Like, she doesn't really care. So I take that back. She wasn't being at all kind. But they do notice there's another shuttle on the way.
Yo, Joe!
And here we go. It's just the Defiant has just released from the booster rockets. And on the Defiant, we've got... let's see, Roblox, Sci-Fi, Hawk, Payload, looks like Slipstream, And I think that is we're going to find, I think that is Mainframe on the ship. Oh no, it's Dialtone. On the ship with him. That's a good crew. And so we see that the Defiant has lasers. They're ready to be armed. Now the Cobra shuttle, because we don't know anything, it's made up for the story. It's not like a toy. We don't have to. They've got all kinds of missiles. When they're making up a toy, you're making up a vehicle for this. It can have whatever it needs. You're using the Defiant. You kind of have to go with what the toy has, right? But we get some space combat is what we're here for. And we see that the whole time Scrap Iron has been with them. Yay, Scrap Iron.
Yo, Joe!
So we've got some incoming missiles. And the trick is not to react to the last second. So he ducks them. So missiles in space, missiles aren't like, they don't, heat seek kind of thing, apparently. They just go in a straight line and you just dodge them away. But Sci-Fi is trying to get he's trying to get a shot. And with them ducking and weaving in space, it's, space physics is always going to be wonky. I enjoy Star Wars space physics, but then that doesn't really translate to the real Joe, like real world Joe that I do enjoy. So I think that's what some of this is too, because I kind of enjoy the real world Joe. And when you get into dodging missiles in space, but I'll take it. It's still exciting. And so they're flying in low too, because they need to sever the claw that's kidnapping the satellite.
Yo, Joe!
And here's Sci-Fi giving it, what is it? He calls it 2 for the shot, for the 2 shots for the price of 1. So they've set, so what Larry did here is he set up a Sci-Fi versus Scrap Iron fight. And they're both playing a video game trying to shoot each other. Sci-Fi scores first, and he does blow the arm off that Cobra shuttle. But Scrap Iron has launched 3 or 4 more missiles. And Sci-Fi did score a direct hit on the cockpit, which proceeds to knock the Baroness out.
Yo, Joe!
So the Joes dodge those missiles again, which congrats. And now we see their robot arm extending, and they're going to rescue the satellite and the astronaut and stuff. So now with the Baroness knocked out, this is that moment in stories where there's an imposter, where everything has gone wrong. Everything he's prepared to do is, he's flying by the seat of his pants. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's in over his head. You get this a lot in these imposter kind of stories. And this panel sequence is great. So that you see the Baroness, she's been knocked out. She's on the ground. Fred's going to help her out. And all of the techno, techno vipers, or did I say I'm sorry, I said techno vipers earlier. Televipers. They're a bunch of televipers. All the televipers, they're all saying, they're telling, their helm's sluggish. We're losing this. We're losing that. Scrap Iron's asking him questions. The Baroness is out. You get this kind of medium close up on his face. Cobra Commander, we're standing by for our orders. And just the word Cobra Commander. And it's just a zoom in close up on his eyeball. And it's the height of panic and hysteria.
Yo, Joe!
Which is awesome, because then he chooses to cut away from that. He leaves you with that. So that is left. That's the state of the Cobra shuttle. Now we go, meanwhile, and we're back outside, and we see the Cobra shuttle's not doing anything. It is just sitting there in space. So we were left in a state of panic and freeze on Fred. The next panel, we see that there's no action being taken. In fact, the Joes are still blasting away and hitting the Cobra shuttle with more lasers as they, the Joes got the satellite and they're taking off. So now the ship, this third panel is completely a Star Trek moment. If they deny it, they're lying. This is totally, let's draw everyone in the bridge being, thrown about like in the old Star Trek show, which is awesome. And we see in the cargo bay, they've rescued that astronaut. And he tells them that they're only interested in the satellite, which Dialtone realizes they're not done yet. It's not just about rescuing this guy. There's more to do.
Yo, Joe!
Now, Fred has got it together. So now he's screaming. I want to, screaming he needs damage report. He gets his report, and then he starts directing and giving orders. And by the end of this page, he's standing defiant, his fists clenched, his arm on his hip, and he actually gets referred to as Cobra Commander by Scrap Iron. They're all giving him yes sirs. So it's great. It's we didn't necessarily need to be in his mind to see what flipped, but we experience it. We see it happen in real time. We see it go from this moment of panic and desperation and probably a realize of, I'm in space, I'm just going to die if I don't get it together. And now the ship is upright, he's standing upright, and now he's in charge. Everyone else is sitting back down in their seats, even the Baroness is back in her seat, and they're back in control.
Yo, Joe!
Now it's a space dogfight. So we get the Defiant. Now, and their lasers are ripping through the hulls. And again, this would be like, oh, then we'd just die. The first rip through the hull, right? Wouldn't it just destroy him? But whatever. It is what it is. But the Defiant is actually getting hit. So they've lost some hull integrity. Hawk is, maintain your heading. We've got to stop them. The only way they're going to stop them is if they ram them. And then we cut back to the Cobra shuttle. This is all very Wrath of Khani, right? And in the shuttle, there's smoke. So, they've taken some hits, and you see Fred is determined, and he's giving orders, and he's telling them what to do. It's really a great moment for him.
Yo, Joe!
And they fire all the missiles. So now he realizes it's not about killing G.I. Joes here. It's about accomplishing their mission, which was stop all those satellites, figure out what was going on with those satellites, and at least put a stop to them. So they weren't able to get the satellites. So I don't think they're, if they follow that logic, I don't think they're ever going to know exactly what the satellite discovered, but they just blew up at least three satellites. So they're going to be able to they're going to be able to stop them, G.I. Joe, from learning more about the Cobra Terrordrome. So their mission is absolutely accomplished. They're all excited. The two ships pass by each other. Remember, the Defiant, their lasers weren't working, so they would have had to ram them, so they don't ram them, and they don't all die in space. They say they'll never be able to replace them before the Terrordrome operation is completely in place. Cobras are celebrating, and the Joes are asking, should we follow them? And Hawk realizes, no, we've got a crew to worry about. We got a damaged space shuttle, bring back in one piece. G.I. Joe's the Joe's mission is not complete. Cobra did complete their mission, and they were successful. Joe still have stuff to do.
Yo, Joe!
Meanwhile, somewhere in Europe, Scarlet is getting knives thrown at her face by a juggling Snake Eyes and Blind Master. Blind Master is juggling active chainsaws, and not just chainsaws, active chainsaws. Snake Eyes is standing on his shoulder, throwing knives at, I'm presuming, spinning Scarlet, and they've joined a circus. This is what they're going to use, and I forgot I forgot all about the circus and the White Clown and all that stuff. This is great to read. They've joined a circus, and that's how they're going to slip into Barovia to rescue the guys, if you remember that from a few issues ago. And the White Clown says, the name is unacceptable. Perhaps something like Los Trios Terrifico.
Yo, Joe!
And he hires them. They're going to go on after the dancing bears and such tacky costumes. Perhaps the wardrobe mistress can stitch on some sequins, he's saying to Snake Eyes as he picks at his commando outfit. The White Clown says they can share a trailer with the dwarf. He'll fill you in on the ropes. I am the White Clown, the owner, manager, ringmaster, accountant, and father confessor of this motley troupe. Come to me if you have any problems. I'm going to a couple of shows here in Austria, then it's off to Barovia. And so that's how our guys are going to sneak into Barovia and rescue the gang. Ladies and gentlemen, what an exciting episode of Joe on Joe Illustrated. This is a good issue. It's a real solid issue. It's a great comic book. It's a one and done. It's the kind of comic you could hand to any kid and he would enjoy and read and get exactly what's going on, but also get a sense of the bigger story that they're telling. It is a fun adventure wrapped up in one. I'm a fan. I hope you guys are too. Until then, we're going to see you next time on Joe on Joe. Now you Joe, and Joeing is half the battle.